I'm Chris Farrell from the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other geeky podcasts over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Welcome to episode 22 of Better Podcasting. My name is Stephen John Drew, and with me today is Stargate Pioneer.
Hey folks, how's it going? I am fresh back from vacation, and we just had to get an episode out this week, right, Stephen?
Absolutely, and that's why you're looking at your phone or your laptop or your... Oh, wait, we determined a couple episodes ago. You're looking at your phone or your tablet. That's the only place you listen to podcasts now, and you're seeing it as a shorter episode. That is true. SP was away. He abandoned me. I spent the weekend rocking in the fetal position because he was pretty much out of internet service the entire time, and so now we are back, and we had to reunite for at least a brief episode. And we are excited today to talk about a special subject and perhaps a giveaway of some form. But before we do get into either of those topics, I do want to remind you that if you check us out on the audio side of things, we have a video component, or if you're watching us and you want to check us out on the road, we have an audio component. So we offer a variety of ways that you can get us. Just go to betterpodcasting.com and you'll see them both. And also, we also want to quickly touch on other podcast appearances that we've been on since last time. And this is actually more so me just wanting to say, I participated in SP's Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast this past week. And wow, it was stressful. I don't know how you do that every time. It's a lot of topics, talk about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. It was very stressful for me, SP.
I'll bet it was. And yes, indeed, you did run the show. It was great. I gave you all the bumps. You did that. You guided the conversation. You had to curdle up to the ladies from time to time and make sure they were taken care of, so yes, it is very stressful. It's a multi-segmented show, and it's a lot of topics to cover, and it's not just the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show. It's all the weekly Marvel news, it's feedback, it's everything that's going on in Marvel that week. And yeah, that is a lot. And I just want to say thank you publicly very much for taking that on for me last week. So, and because of you, the listeners of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually had an episode, because if it wasn't for that, it wasn't going to happen. So thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. It's very easy to say yes, though, to that, because you podcast with some amazing individuals. Lauren and Haley are a beaut to work with. They know the subject. They are so passionate about the subject. I just love them as podcasters, and they are just great people. So kudos to you and the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, which you can check out on the Gonna Geek Network, because we are part of the Gonna Geek Network at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And for those of you out there that are saying, hey, SP, why weren't you there? You have all this mobile gear and you talk about being able to podcast wherever. Why weren't you able to do that? Well, let me tell you. First of all, I literally had no internet connection whatsoever. It was amazing. I got text messages out, and it is a long story. And if you really want to know, someday we could talk about it, but I did not have the connectivity to do a simple podcast. So there's that. And then there's the other thing that we talked about on our time episode a few episodes back, that if you're going to take vacation, go take vacation and leave the podcasting behind, recharge your batteries, and come back refreshed. And that's pretty much what happened. So I'm ready to rev and go into it's a big season in television coming up. And I have 2 television podcasts. I mean, it is because everything culminates in May. And that's where the big year-long shows culminate, and I'm coming up on that, and now I'm refreshed to be able to do that, plus all the big movies that are coming out now. And we do geeky-related shows on Gonna Geek Network, and there is that. But I just wanted to say, it wasn't because I didn't want to, it was because I couldn't, and it was because I really shouldn't have. So there you go. Thank you very much again, Stephen.
No worries. Well, let's go ahead and move into our one segment that we have today, which is our Better Podcasting Download.
Welcome to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
Alrighty, so for this week's Better Podcasting Download, I would say it's a bit of a hot topic. Wouldn't you agree, SP?
It is a red hot topic right now in podcast land, because this is something that a lot of podcasters have kind of pivoted this time of year to go do. And because of some things going on in the broader podcast infrastructure, that this didn't happen early. It usually happened about, I would say, the February timeframe, but it kind of slipped to the right this year a little bit. And a lot of people are genning up for it. And of course, we are talking about the Podcast Awards. Now, these aren't the awards that go with Dragon Con, which a lot of people familiar with the Gonna Geek Network might know, the Parsec Awards. We're not talking about those. We're not talking about the Podcast Awards that are associated with the Podcast Movement Conference that goes on this summer in Chicago. We're talking about something that's been going on for quite some time, 11 years actually, called the Annual Podcast Awards, and they were associated with the New Media Expo. And there's not going to be a New Media Expo this year. So they decided to go ahead and have it again this year. And there was supposed to be a handoff between the person that was doing it before, Todd Cochran of Blueberry and Raw Voice Media, and the New Media Expo people. And that handoff never fully happened. So Todd Cochran took the mantle back up, and he went full-fledged, all cylinders into this thing. They want to do a new website. They want to actually revise the rule, or they have revised the rules a little bit, and they are going forth to this. So this is largely, Stephen, a listener-based awards, would you say?
Yeah, that's my understanding of it, is that they're very, very much based on the listeners, and it's essentially a voting system. That's how it works, is they do poll the people, and there's a couple different steps in there, but yeah, it's the People's Award.
Pretty much. So a couple of things. Now, why would you be interested in having an award? Well, first of all, if you just are proud of the stuff that you've done, you want to be recognized for it. A lot of people do. I'm not personally one of those individuals, but I know a lot of people do want to be recognized for the great work they do. So there is that. Also, you can put a symbol on your website saying, hey, we're the award-winning whatever. And I have, Stephen, I know I've done something you haven't. I have podcasted. I've had a co-host who is a podcast award winner. And that would be Sean O'Hara. He won the Parsec Award for a previous podcast. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And it is something that you can say and you can have on your resume. And it is something that, so some people are looking for podcasts. They're like, okay, have you won an award? No. Has this podcast won an award? Yes, I'm going to go with this podcast. So some people actually search for that stuff as well. But it is something, if you win, you can throw on your website. And like we said, there's different types of awards to give out. In this particular case, it is like the People's Choice Award, basically, and listeners vote on what podcast to go ahead and win. So this leads into some issues, but before we get to that, I want to say that if you are a podcaster, if you're a hobby podcaster, and you happen to have a few extra dollars in your account, which I'm guessing will be a not that large percentage of you, But if you are a podcaster and you are interested in supporting awards like this, right now, Todd Cochran, in order to revamp the website, has started a GoFundMe campaign, which you can find if you go to the website podcastawards.com. It is to revamp the website. Now, a lot of people started wondering, well, why do you need $25,000 for this? It is because that is actually how much it costs to run, maintain, develop, code a website for this sort of application this year's. In this year, 11 million people will visit this website or 11 million hits or whatever. So that's a lot of traffic, and the website has to be capable of doing that. So if you're interested in supporting, go to GoFundMe, or the podcastawards.com will take you to the GoFundMe link, and you can do that there. So there's that. Now let's get back to the voting, right, Stephen?
Absolutely. Now, the voting is done via the website, and there's a whole bunch of other stipulations in here. But why we want to talk about it today is because some of the rules have changed in recent, and one thing that has changed is that in order to keep things open and essentially allow for some broader awareness of different podcasts, there is now a rule about, what is it called? Legacy podcasts, I believe that's what they call them, which are essentially the previous year winners, right, SP?
Yeah, there's actually 3 different type of legacy podcasts. If you won the award last year, you cannot win it the next year. So this will prevent certain podcasts from continually to dominate the award category every year. If you have won the award the last 4 out of 5 years, which is kind of impossible with that new, you can't have if you've won it last year, you can't win it this year, but they're looking back at the last 10 years of awards. If you've won it the last 4 out of 5 years, you are now considered a legacy podcast, and you can never win the award again. And I believe it's the last, I want to say it's 5 out of 10 or something. I forget what the 10-year thing, but it's a certain number of the last 10 years. You are now considered a legacy podcast, and the legacy podcast will never be able to compete for that award again, but you get to be put on the awards committee where you get to develop you are able to be placed on it, and you can help develop rules, you can help promote it, you can help support it, and that sort of thing. So there are rules that have been put in place this year just to prevent the same old shows from winning again and again. And some of these shows don't even show up. They don't care about the award. I know Todd Cochran has as he said, a box full of awards in his office that nobody can't even get an address to send them to. So this is meant for more participation. Now, there is another aspect that is put in for participation. In order to participate, you have to register your podcast, which is a $10 fee.
Right. And nomination-wise, the way it works is any listener can nominate any podcast that is registered, and they have to pay that. Their podcast has to pay that registration fee. But yeah, any listener can nominate a podcast by going to the site and entering in the information there. Now, there's a whole bunch of measures that are in there in order to help prevent fraud, because they do want, one form filled out per user, and they don't want people stuffing the ballot box sort of thing. And so that's how the nomination process works. And then later there is an actual voting process and whatnot. Now, here's one of the things that has recently come up that is sort of becoming a hot topic is in the past years, there have been certain larger networks which have had their listener base rally around 1 or 2 or 3 individual podcasts. So people like the Gonna Geek Network, who doesn't have as big of a listenership as another network, probably don't really stand much of a chance. So this legacy rule helps really share the wealth a little bit and allow other people to get in there. But where there's a will, there's a way. And there is a network which just came out and are essentially going to rally behind other podcasts that they know of. Could be friends, could be associates, but there are essentially going to still rally the troops, but for a different podcast. So the same sort of people who did work together last year to end up rallying behind a podcast are just going to do it with a non-legacy member. So I get the idea. Me personally, I get the idea of the rule, and you want to make sure to like I said, share the wealth and expose a lot of different podcasts. But again, where there's a will, there's a way.
There is. And before we get into it a little bit farther, let me clarify. There are 20 different categories which you can vote for once these podcasts are nominated. So 20 different categories. You can nominate a podcast once the nomination period is closed. And then there's a committee that actually reviews the podcasts, and those that make the cut from the committee saying, yeah, they're worthy of going forward. Like they don't have just 2 episodes or whatever. Then they will be on the ballot. Now, you will have one opportunity for each individual for each day to go in and vote for a podcast in each one of those 20 slots. So that voting takes place over 15 days. So basically, everybody should have 15 votes that they can get. And if you can mobilize your audience, and the bigger audience you have and the more people you can actually mobilize within that audience, you can go ahead and really stoke the ballot box, as you were talking about, and become a winner. So yeah, it is a popularity contest. It's not necessarily the best podcast out there. It's not necessarily the most entertaining, the best produced or whatever. It is the People's Choice Awards. Now, because of this, and because of what Stephen was just talking about, you can take those 15 days and you can tell your entire audience and your entire network and your entire network's friends networks to go vote for these 20 shows for the 20 different categories. And based on your listenership and the laser focus that they can actually go ahead and basically game the system and win so they can appoint, if they have enough people, they can appoint actually who wins each of these categories. So it's not necessarily fair, not that anything in life is really fair. So it's not something that somebody will step in and say, oh, well, it's not fair that they're stoking the ballot box, or they've got tens of thousands of people actually voting for this science and medicine podcast, and it's really a crap show, but they've got a lot of people that are voting for it. Well, that's the way it is, folks. That is, and we're just sort of trying to get your expectations to the point where that is what this version of Podcast Awards is about. It is about mobilizing your audience and going and voting, but that's in the second half. You still have to make that first cut as well. So
I agree.
If you have a show out there that only has one episode, it's not going to actually be part of this.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is there are potentially a negative side of things. There's some positive side of things too as well, which is the fact that the podcast community there's an award ceremony that is going to recognize some podcasts, and it is going to guarantee that the podcasts are not the ones that came up last year. And further to that, I really like how they've taken these legacy podcasts and they're honoring them at the award ceremony as well. So they're not getting ripped off. They're still getting recognition at the award ceremony. So a really, really neat thing, and it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out this year. Maybe there'll be some rule changes for the following year, but I encourage you, if you're interested in this, why not put a call out to your listener base and see if they want to go ahead and nominate you, and maybe you'll end up working your way through there, and maybe you won't win, maybe you will win, but it would be a really good experience that you can go part of. So I think that's something that, don't be afraid. And what's the worst that happens? You don't make the ballot, right?
Yeah, or you make the ballot and you don't win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no big deal. It is what it is, and you've tried, and then maybe you can try something else in the next year. And people do a lot of things. I've heard of people that have actually podcast apps, which you can get through if you have a media host with like Libsyn or Spreaker or whatever. You can have them develop an app, and then you can put in a push notification for everybody that has that app once a day to say, hey, go vote for me in the podcast awards or whatever. So there is absolutely different. You can put out a podcast a day, and for those 15 days, remind people, hey, go vote for me or whatever. So if you're really interested in winning, There is a lot of different things you can do. I will warn you that some of your listeners, probably a large percentage of your listeners, will get bored of it really quickly and will actually be turned off by you doing some of that stuff. So you really have to have a community around your listenership in order to really mobilize everybody to go ahead and win this. And there's some networks out there that have it and some that don't. So I want to gauge your expectations towards what your audience is in terms of engagement, in terms of what they're willing to do, or whatever. And if you're just curious to see, hey guys, do you think we should go do this? Ask them. And if you don't get a large response, then your expectations should probably be along those lines. But if you do get a large response, then go full bore into it and see what you can do. Absolutely. You deserve it. You're doing a lot of hard work. I know that.
For sure. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up the Better Podcasting download. Shall we get into a little special contest announcement that we have?
Ooh, special contest announcement. Every contest announcement is special on the Gonna Geek Network.
Absolutely. Well, here we go. All right. Before we get into this, because I just love to tease, and then make you wait a little bit here. I want to take this moment here to recognize you, the listener / viewer. It is you that makes us keep doing this podcast, and we love to get your feedback. We've talked about it a couple of times, and we did end up getting a piece of feedback that was sent to us a couple of ways, via Twitter and via iTunes. That's right. We had the one and only Knox Richardson. Actually, I don't know that he is the one and only, but to me, you're the one and only Knox Richardson. And he did write an iTunes review. And the iTunes review said this: "This is the best podcast about podcasting for the hobby podcaster. Not only is the show informative, but it also is very engaging and entertaining. This podcast about podcasting is unique because of the two-host format and because it's geared towards the hobby podcaster. It doesn't matter if you are a beginner or a veteran, this show will help you improve your podcast. Thank you for all you do and keep up the excellent work, Knox Richardson." So, Knox, thank you very much for that. That was really nice for us both to read. And I can't believe I just read that through, saying podcast about podcasting without making a mistake.
Yeah, it was great. Stephen can read sometimes. Although in true acknowledgement, he has actually seen that before. But yes, Knox said he was going to go ahead and give us a review. He said 5-star reviews headed your way. He actually delivered. Thank you very much, Knox. Yes. And for anybody else out there that wants to give us a 5-star review, just go to iTunes and whatever country you're in, give us a 5-star review and write it down. If it's funny, well, I guarantee you will laugh. And we might just read it on the podcast too, just like Knox. So thank you very much. That is cool. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. We've already answered some of his questions. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and do that as well. We would appreciate that. But also, we got one more bit of feedback, didn't we?
We did. And it came from the previous contest winner, Diami Paloki. Well timed, Diami, because we're about to launch a new contest. And Diami sent a picture, which, again, you can find at betterpodcasting.com. And it is a picture of Diami's 2-mic setup. It was the Zoom H5 handheld recorder with, on channel 1, the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. And then on the other microphone that honestly I'm not too sure which model it is. But still, a cool, simple 2-microphone portable setup that Diami was able to go and use. So very, very cool. I know that the first recording hit this past weekend. So love to see you using that microphone, Diami, and keep the pictures coming. We love to see it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to check out his podcast yet because I have literally only tonight got my internet back. So I have been busy trying to get my own podcast out, but I will be taking a listen to it and see how great that ATR 2100 sounds. And as far as, color coordination, he's got a little blue mic foam windscreen on there. I got to say the silver ATR 2100 and the blue windscreen go well together. So good job on color coordinating. He also has a blue XLR cord. So
I noticed
he's going full bore into the color coordination. So good job there, Diami.
Absolutely. All right. So that takes us to the moment of truth. We've given away a microphone that helps you sound good. And now you've got one of two things that you're going to do with the next contest. Not either you're going to go and make yourself look good if you're doing video, or you're just going to go Skype with some friends, maybe even us. So what exactly do we have on deck there, Pioneer of Stargate?
Well, I was looking around the studio and, I just went on a trip, and just in case I did get internet, and you never know if you're going to be stuck somewhere with a car repair or whatever, I did disengage my Logitech C920 camera number 2 out of the 3 that I have. And I was looking at it going, you know what? This is great. This is versatile. It's got a little camera mount hole on the bottom, so you can put it on a tripod, you can put it on a wall mount, whatever. I actually have a wall mount on camera number 3, and it's got the standard, like every webcam has had since the beginning, a little notch so you can put it on top of your monitors. Camera number 1, by the way, is actually on my monitor. So I was thinking it's great 1080 video, and it's got stereo sound, so I wouldn't recommend using this sound for a podcast. By the way, I would recommend the ATR 2100 or another dynamic Diami's got, I've got Diami on the brain, dynamic cardioid microphone, but this does have everything you need in a webcam. And I was thinking we should give one away. So you know what I did? I went and we bought, Logitech is not sponsoring us whatsoever, but we bought a Logitech C920. It's still in the box. It's not my camera that I was holding up a second ago. This is a brand new one, and it can be yours. So we're going to be running this contest, and we'll tell you what you have to do in a second, through the entire month of April and May. At the end of May, it's over with, and we will be giving it away just like we did the ATR 2100. Now, Mr. Steven, tell the listener what they have to do in order to enter into their chance to get the Logitech C920.
Absolutely. So this here, I want to first start by saying that the C920 is indeed a camera that SP and I use every week. It is the one that we video this podcast with, and we both have second cameras to take with us on the road, or just use as a second camera, whatever it is. We use them. They're nice, beautiful cameras. And once again, contest not sponsored. This is something that we like this camera so much that we want to make sure that one lucky viewer / listener does get it. So what you're going to do is the same way we ran the last contest, is you're going to email contest@betterpodcasting.com, and you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself. One thing we want to know is, just like last time, what are you going to do with this camera? Except SP has come up with a very clever 3-letter thing, hasn't he?
Yeah, it might have something to do because I'm from Minnesota, and 3M, Minnesota Milling and Mining Corporation, although in this particular case, 3M does not apply to that. So how are you going to use it? Are you going to put it on your monitor? Are you going to mount it on a tripod or a wall-based mount? Or are you going to take it with you mobily, kind of like what I just did on my vacation? So what use case will you have for this? And also tell us a little bit about, are we doing the first? Is that what we just said? Okay, so
Yeah.
what can you tell us a little bit about what you remember about your very first webcam use experience. And we're not looking for anything dirty here, by the way. What we're trying to do is, the webcams have been around for a few years, and odds are you've used one, Skyping friends, talking to your parents. Are you doing a video cast? I mean, what was your first use of the video, of the webcam? So yeah, your first use, not dirty, folks. And if that was your first use, I don't want to hear about it. But what's your first use? And then how are you going to actually use it? Remember the 3 M's: mount, monitor, or mobile.
For sure. And email contest@betterpodcasting.com and email us before the end of May 2016. And I'm going to share my first webcam story. I remember my first webcam that I used, which was absolutely for video chatting, probably by, I think it was a program called Eyeball Chat, maybe. And it might have been something else, but it was this little white Logitech thing that had this base that it was round, had a little base that went on there. And the damn thing always fell out of the base. It was constantly falling off, going everywhere. It didn't have a monitor mount or anything either, so it was a royal pain. But hey, it got me videoing with people.
So my first use, and I think I just recently threw this away because I was cleaning out stuff, and I did send pictures to Steven of the box and stuff, so he knows what I'm talking about. But basically, I was using AOL a lot about, 12 years ago or so. I can't remember the exact date. It was probably longer than 12 years ago. I had a laptop, and back then laptops did not come integrated with cameras. And today, even the professional ones don't, at least the PC versions. I know Macs, you can't get one without it. But anyway, I was on AOL and I was just chatting with folks. And I was like, I need to do this. So I can't remember the make model of it, but it was a little silver one, and it was able to clamp on the back end or the monitor of the screen, basically, of the laptop. And I used it on AOL chat back in the day, and it was just terrible. the quality and whatever, it barely looked like a person. And I might have some pictures that I took with it laying around. I will, over the course of the next 2 months, we will look for that sort of stuff, and if it's just a picture or if it's actual pictures that were taken by it, we will make sure that we put it in there. But so that was my first use, and I was just talking to friends on it, whatever. And I think the microphone, though, it did not have a microphone in it. I think the microphone had to use the laptop microphone, in which they did come with a built-in microphone on the laptop, but not. You know what? No, they didn't. I had to use one of those chat headsets with the 2 different 3.5 millimeter plug. Oh my gosh. And I can't remember if it was Logitech or whatever, but so it didn't have a microphone in it, and I had to use a chat headset, and it was basically me video casting back then, I guess, but without like any video or casting really. But anyway, so that's my first use. If you have a different use case, like if you're doing it for school, or if and that might have actually been why I got it, but it's not what I used it for, or if it's just to keep track of your grandkids or whatever, go ahead. We want to hear what you used your first webcam for, and then also what you're going to use this one for.
Absolutely. But that does take us to the end of episode 22 of Better Podcasting. So for episode 22, I am Stephen John Drew.
And I'm Stargate Pioneer.
And we'll be back next week continuing that budget arc.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Better Podcasting. We want to hear from you. You can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. If you like the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review in iTunes. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week.